Hey there, my name's Mark McCartney and welcome to the What is a Good Life podcast. On this week and the 110th episode, I'm delighted to introduce our guest, Paul Davis. Paul is an award winning business growth consultant and speaker, a 3-time best selling author, an intuitive business mentor, and a recognized thought leader. He combines his innate intuitive gifts and years of business growth experience to help clients to greater results. In this conversation, Paul shares his lifelong quest to understand what keeps him wanting to live life and how he has navigated various philosophies and methodologies to find his own purpose. We explore his realization of his intuitive abilities, the significance of our intentions, discovering our soul contracts, and the importance of being your genius you. Paul has a fascinating story, and this whole episode is a wonderful invitation to rekindle the power of our intuition. Just before you listen to this episode, just to give you a heads up that it gets deep very quickly. In Paul's response to my typical opening question of, is there a question you're exploring as you move through life? There are mentions of suicidal ideation and Paul's experience of grappling with and living with that experience. So if anyone has been impacted by such experiences, just to give you a heads up that occurs very early in this conversation. With that being said, I found this conversation to be wonderfully insightful and really fascinating. And so I hope you take as much from this conversation as I did. So that's all I have to say for this week, and I look forward to carrying on this weekly conversation with you next week. And so without further ado, the 110th episode of the What is a Good Life podcast.
Paul, thank you so much for joining me today on the What is a Good Life podcast. Since speaking with you last and thoroughly enjoying that conversation, I'm very intrigued to see where this conversation goes today.
Thank you, Mark, and it's absolutely brilliant to be here. Delighted to be here with you.
Great stuff. So, Paul, as I forewarned you, the question I start with is the question of: is there a question you're exploring as you move through life?
Yeah, because it has quite a lot of significance for my perspective, and I suppose to give context to listeners, it's a question that I have been trying to find the answer to from a very, very young age, and I've been working on it literally all my life, and I have been um, I've come to a lot of conclusions with it, a lot of understanding, and but it's still something that I still pursue and still kind of add to and try and figure out. And what that question is basically is, okay, so what is it that would keep me wanting to live life? So as soon as I heard your question, I kind of said, okay, we're going to go really, really deep on this one very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But it's been simply that, in terms of, okay, so what is actually, what's the thing, or what is the element that's going to want me to live life fully?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And could you give me some context, even just to when that emerged or appeared for you?
Yeah, so it goes back to really, really young. So my first memory of it is at the age of 10. And nothing that, like, don't get me wrong, there's nothing significant going on at home, in terms of, like, I didn't grow up in a wild household, or an abusive family, or anything like that whatsoever. But I always had this thought in my mind, in one respect of, um, for one word, the statement was, I just don't want to be here. I literally had no inkling of any desire or want, or anything of wanting to be here in this life. Absolutely nothing. I just wanted to get out as quickly as possible. But there were no influences, if you want to call it that way, in terms of that would drive me to want that. I came from, I'm one of 7 brothers, so we were a large family, in Ireland, Roman Catholic, brought up. Um, Both parents were in family, typical middle class family. So nothing unusual from that perspective. But I'd go through literally pretty much every day, every week, every month, every year, as I was growing up, saying, I just don't want to be here. And then the question turned out, okay, so what would keep me here? What would make me want to be here? Now, it wasn't until kind of later on in life that I suppose, got attuned and understanding and knowledge of my makeup, for one better word. I'm not talking about cosmetics. I'm talking about more around. I'm an empath. I'm intuitive. So in some respects, I was picking up the energies and the thoughts and emotions of other people around me. And that would have been impact me, and it still does to a certain extent, albeit that I can protect against it. Um, if I'm with other people, like I can pick up their energies, like I can come down very quickly with somebody's energy, depending on their makeup. Um, so that would have obviously given rise to some of the elements of me not wanting to be or not enjoying life. The more research I went into it in terms of um, let me put it this way. I've gone through every single I'm going to say nearly every single subject matter that people would typically go through. So philosophy, spirituality, um, psychology, human behavior, you name it. I've gone through them all. I've gone through all different types of. I reckon I've done every single personality type assessment that's been known to man,
Right.
and I've done what everybody does in terms of trying to find a purpose, for example, and none of it worked for me. Absolutely none of it, and nothing gave me the answers of what I was searching for. Um, and it got to a point in my life that I actually said, you know what, I need to do my own research, and my own research in terms of, okay, so what's if I was to answer rather than relying on somebody else in terms of other books that I would read or what it would be to try and find the answers which I couldn't find, um, what would be the answer that I could find for myself? I know that's kind of contrary, but it's trying to. I bring everything back to the Wright brothers, and if you remember the Wright brothers, they were trying to create a flying machine, an engine-propelled flying machine that would maintain itself in the air. It hadn't been done before. It had been tried multiple times before, but it just couldn't be achieved. For me, and even though they had read all the research in terms of what other inventors had done before, what worked, what didn't work, and so on, they came up with their own methodology or their own invention. For me, I was doing exactly the same thing. I had looked what everybody else had done, wasn't given the answers, wasn't working, so therefore I had to create my own methodology or my own way of trying to figure it out for me. And that's what I've done, and that's what I've been working with clients for many years, tweaking and perfecting that process, for one of the word, but also in some respects kind of. So when I was working with clients, I would get, and this is where the intuition comes into play. So I'd get what I call insights or knowings or downloads for other people in terms of different things for them. But the more I kind of worked with the clients and understood the information I was getting, I realized I was actually getting information relating to what their purpose was. Because I'd go into a company, I qualified as a management accountant. I've been into companies, I've turned them around, I've scaled them, I've grown them, and all that kind of things. But invariably, what I was doing is I was using the intuitive side to figure out what was going to bring the companies the most success. So with that evidence, because I'm hugely logical, I love processes as accountants do. Um, I was then trying to marry the evidence that I was getting for clients and the insights and the knowings I was getting for the clients, trying to match the two of them together and find some sort of correlation, which I managed to do. And then I reverse engineered it for myself in terms of, okay, so what is it that if I'm able to find out what an individual is to do in their life, and I could also pick up the intention behind why they're to do it and the impact of what they're to do. Because I'd get images for them and all that kind of things. And some of them are like they're phenomenal, they're amazing to see. Um, but I'd always come back to my own question in terms of, okay, so yeah, but what am I supposed to do? So that's where I started to reverse engineer the evidence I was getting from my clients, reapply it for myself, and then I was able to find the answer for myself, and then turn it into a methodology that now I could, rather than, I suppose, rely on the intuitive side, because again, the accountant in me would say, oh, look at you, what I need evidence for this. Like, don't give me this woo-woo stuff and tell me that, because I'd get clients say, look, Paul, you're just making it up. But I'd absolutely emphatically know. And then a number of months later, they come back to me and say, oh my God, look at what you told me. he was exactly right. But for me, I needed evidence. I needed proof. And that's where I developed a methodology. And now, thankfully, it's at a point whereby I turned it into a course, an online course. Loads of people have gone through that particular course, and I'm now in the process of turning that into a book to try and reach more and more people, um, rather than them going through the same headache and heartache of trying to figure out what they're here for and what their life is all about. So that's a long a long answer to a pretty short question.
Yeah, but I was honestly just thinking while listening to it, what an interesting and wonderful answer. Just in terms of how you were, like, did you start to, even along this inquiry or even before you started to get such clear, evidence, that we'll say for the sake of the accountancy side of things, did you start to get comfort in the exploration of it, or how did you even navigate that? Because that sounds like even just
Frustration.
the idea of being an empath and picking up on
Yeah,
things, and being an empath in Ireland, I'm sure there's a lot of surprises too. you
exactly.
know,
There's nowhere to go.
yeah,
So it wasn't until I think I'm 56 now. I think it was probably until I was in my 40s, mid 40s, before I actually came across other people that were empaths and would openly say they were intuitive and so on and pick up information. So a lot of for me was kind of self taught and trying to figure things out. So it was hugely frustrating in one sense, and then when you get a whole lot of emotions and you don't know what the source of those emotions are, you're again it's I'm going to say frustrating, but there's a whole lot of other emotions to go along with that.
right,
Um, but then later in life, when you realize, oh, okay, so I'm picking up somebody else's energy, and I know that's hard for a lot of listeners to kind of figure out in terms of well, how can you pick up somebody else's energy? It's actually pretty easy. Well, I find it easy anyway, but it's actually quite frustrating because and what I mean by their emotions, I'd pick up from a much deeper level within them. So I call it a soul level. Because again, within Ireland, you'll get a lot of people, and I've done it for years, whereby you'd meet somebody, but you're wearing a mask,
yeah,
and you're kind of saying, "How are you today? I'm grand." It's the typical Irish response. Um, and I'd come across other people, and they'd say, "Ah, yeah, I'm grand, or I'm fine, or yeah, everything's okay," and so on. But I'd get a feeling inside myself which would be contrary to "I'm grand."
yeah,
And that's where I would know, okay, maybe things aren't so good. But then we'd explore a conversation, we'd have and I'd get people turn around to me at the end of the conversation and say, I've never told anybody in my whole life what I've just told you. So that's where the conversations tended to go. So an element of frustration of trying to figure it out and not getting the answers. Like the number of books that I read and the number of courses I did were jeepers, I never studied as much for the leaving cert as I did for trying to figure out my quest. Um, but so frustration on one side, but then on the other side, bottom line is like me saying I just didn't want to be here. I've had many thoughts of planning how would I exit, what would I do, and all that kinds of things. So when somebody has experienced suicide ideation, which I've had done, I know what that's like, and that's not a happy place to be, and it absolutely is not a happy place to be in. But that was my um, that's what it was like growing up for me in terms, and from like the earliest memory that I have is age 10. And when you're going through life, and now don't get me wrong, other people would perceive me as being hugely successful. So they'd see my career path. They would see that I set up my own business in 2001. They would see the kind of clients I was working with and the results I was getting for clients. So on the outside world, I had the car, I had the house, I had the money and the holidays and all that kind of things. So from the outside world, everybody would perceive, oh my God, the guy's doing really well. On the inside world, inside my head, a completely different story altogether. But the weird part, not that all of that we've just said is not weird. It is weird. The weird part of my head was I was trying to find a solution.
Right.
So I wasn't, not that I wasn't giving up. Don't give me, it's not about giving up. It's a case of I wanted to find an answer, and I was determined to find an answer. And that's perhaps in some respects what kept me going. Um, but now, like, so when I've been working with clients, I just love it. I absolutely love what I'm doing with clients, and the especially when we're doing the purpose work, because I just know the impact it has for them, and just the difference it makes for them, especially for somebody that has been lost for years or has been searching for, okay, what am I to do, and so on. And some people perceive that it's a midlife crisis in some respects, but I've had people from ages 23 right up to I think the eldest was 76, I think it was. So I've had all ages, all different walks of life, all different people, and the difference it makes for them when you get the answers is huge, and the beauty in it. Because I loved it, because this is one thing that always used to kind of be a niggly for me in terms of, I kind of referred to earlier on. I would pass on information for clients, and some clients would turn around and say, "Oh, look, yeah, you're just making it up." Or I'd know by them. They may not even have to verbalize the words, "Oh, Paul, you're just making it up." I'd know by them that they're not accepting it. Um, so for now, where they can find the evidence in their life, and it kind of, when we put all together and pieces together, it's a bit like a jigsaw. Um, and you can see it in their eyes. Oh my God, okay, that's it. But they know it's it
Right.
because they can see the evidence in their own life. I've just guided them by asking particular questions. They come up with the answers, and then they literally know, okay, that's exactly what I've been looking for. So that's the difference. Yeah.
Can you tell me, like, just can you elaborate even on the experience of what you consider your intuitive side? Like, when you're saying images appear, you're
Yeah.
passing on information. Could
Yeah.
you elaborate a little bit on that?
Um, I get in multiple different formats. So I'll get an image about somebody, and it'll be an image of them way in the future, and they may be doing an activity or doing something. But it's a bit like I see it's like seeing a photograph, but it's a photograph from the future, and that's what it's. So I can see it in color. I can see the pictures and what it represents, but I also see or I feel the intention behind it. And that's where I always use the word intention, because intention is a hugely powerful, in how the universe works. Intention is really important. It's not about what we think and all that kind of things. It's the intention behind what we're doing, and I can drill down into much deeper. Um, but so let me put it this way. Let me explain intention, because it's really important. Um, if somebody wants to, let's just say they want to do something to somebody, that can be from an intention of hate, or it can be from an intention of love. It's two different things. So it's not necessarily the action that they're doing, or the result that they get. It's the intention behind why they're actually doing it. And everything in the universe, I'm always very careful of using absolutes, but I'm going to say 99.9% of the thing in the universe is intention. And the more clear you are on your intention, well, then the more impact it has in everything that you'll come across. So I'll know the intention behind why they're to do what they're to do, and then also the impact of them doing what they're to do. So I'll get the image, I'll get the intention, I'll get the impact, um, and then different milestones throughout their life. I'll get images from that perspective. But let me put it this way: so that's the image side of things. There's another aspect from an intuitive side, which is it's a knowing. Okay, now a knowing, to kind of try and describe it. If you take a breath of fresh air, or you just breathe in, you know the air is going to be there. I can't question Mark. Look, the air is not. It's going to run out. It's never going to be there, and
Yeah.
your brain could not comprehend it. Your brain would just say, "Look, Paul, don't be so ridiculous. Of course, there's going to be air as soon as I breathe in." That's knowing. So when I get a knowing, I've no idea where it comes from. But I do, but that's from a universe perspective. But I can't create it. I can't make it up. I can't just, but it's literally just that knowledge is literally planted in my brain, and now I know. Um, so when you marry the images and the knowings, and then the empathic and the feeling side of things, um, that's where the whole thing comes into play. So that's where the intuitive side comes in.
Can you tell me just what that experience of knowing is like, or even like for moments when you even first perceived it to be a knowing, and what kind of occurrences that led to within you as well?
Um, what I find is I literally, okay, you're asking, I've never been asked this question before, so it's a really interesting one. I find it's kind of a weird way to describe, I vibrate at a higher frequency.
Yeah,
It's like a vibration. It's the only way I can describe it. I It's like as if heat is coming from me, but I'm not hot. It's really weird to describe. But I'm in a zone where it's it's like I can observe myself, but it's not me. And it's not that, Jesus. I can imagine people saying, "Oh my God, he's schizophrenic or something like that." It's
no,
not about that at all.
trust me.
Yeah.
There's many lines of inquiry in this podcast. So if
Oh, I can
someone's still
imagine. I
listening
can
at this
imagine.
stage,
But it's not. When you experience it, you kind of. So there's, I can't remember the guy's name, the author, but he wrote the book, Untethering the Soul, or something
Michael
along those
Singer.
lines.
Yeah,
Yeah, and how he describes the seat of soul is exactly how I would describe it. Exactly, in terms of what it's like to be able to observe your human nature, but you're from that position of spirit. So therefore you see so it's not that you're still conscious and you're still there, you're observant and you see everything, but you're, for one better word, the way I maintain the connection is that I'm just a channel. That's
yeah.
all I am. No, it's not about me. It's not about who I am and all the kinds of things, or what I've gone through and so on. I'm just a voice. I'm just a channel. So all I'm doing is just passing on the information. So so just take that analogy for the moment. If you can imagine, because everybody's will understand this if they're listening. If you can imagine a drain pipe on a house, and you can see the water flowing from one end of the drain pipe to the other end of the drain pipe, and it goes down the down pipe. And if hopefully people can follow this analogy, you're seeing the information coming in and going down the pipe and then down the drain hole. That's what being a channel is like. You can feel and see and sense the information coming through. It's coming through you as a channel, and you're just passing the information on. That's all you're doing. So in that way you're the observer. You're not creating it. You're manipulating it. You're literally just passing it on. That's all it is. And so the experience of that is, yeah, I vibrate. I physically feel a higher vibration, a higher energy. I'm absolutely buzzed. Hence the reason why I love doing it. I've never taken drugs, so I don't know what it's like to be on, say, LSD or something. But I can imagine that buzz that people get from a drug. That's what I get when I'm literally flowing. Um, and therefore, so when I finish a conversation from that, or I finish a meeting, when I'm in that zone, I, Jesus, it'd be like Bono coming off stage and needing 2 days to decompress.
Right.
That's I just love it. Yeah.
Just out of interest, when did you realize then that part of your role then was to give these knowings voice? Like, was that
It kind of the way I suppose developed, for one of it, word, because I didn't. I was trying to understand it.
right?
And trying to understand, okay, so where's this information coming from and so on. But I would ask, people that I'd come across, I'd ask them questions. I'd say, have you ever considered X, or what? Why? Why all of a sudden do I have a thought that you've that, for example, pottery's in your life, and like, where on earth do you get that from?
Right.
And then the person said, yeah, but my grandmother did pottery. So, oh, okay. So it was kind of your, hence the reason why I'd always be second guessing the information I'd be getting. But the way I would bring it across to people that I'd meet would be, look, at you know what? I don't know why, but I just have this thought of X. Does that make any sense to you? And they would say, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Or it's something that they've been thinking about or planning or questioning or whatever it be, and so on. And then over time, when you accumulate all those experiences and evidence and all the kinds of things, you kind of say, okay, so this is the kind of information I'm getting. This is the kind of what it relates to and all the kinds of things. Then you start to see correlations. You start to see commonality coming through. Yeah,
Is that did that take a while to get used to? Like, did
yeah,
it?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
because
Today
I know
we,
I know someone very close to me that's describing situations like that, and
yeah,
they've had a very long line of inquiry too in their lives with different questions.
yeah,
And so what you're saying there just sounds very, familiar. I think this person's 100% full of integrity,
yeah,
and extremely
yeah,
insightful. So it's not.
yeah.
I'm not just saying everyone pops up in my life saying that this is their
No, no,
experience,
yeah,
but it sounds remarkable. Just the innocuous kind of questions. I don't know why this is coming, why this is a thought, but does this make any sense? Like that really, it starts just in our kind of mid, the kind of like the solid material sense of the world that we know at times, and the way in which we communicate. It sounds like it could call into question a lot of different things or open up a lot more inquiries.
yeah.
How was that like for yourself?
But here's the thing: everybody can do it. So, but we shut it down. So, not saying a lot of the work, but a good chunk of the work that I do with clients is actually helping them to develop their own intuitive side. Because, and let me explain a few different things. We were born to use our intuitive side, but it's bashed out of us basically by going through school, by going through, as we're growing up as kids and all that, and society basically. Because I'll hear stories of, for example, kids run into their parents and say, "Oh, I've just, I have this thought, or I have this X, Y, and Z, or have this something in my mind, or I've just spoken to," for example, even if for ones that are sensitive towards spirit, and they say, I was just having a conversation with Granny, and Granny's passed away, but the kid isn't aware of that. And the mother or the father will say, "Look, don't be so stupid. Granny's passed away." Not that the parent will say, "Don't be so stupid." Although you'd be surprised with some parents. They'll dismiss it for the child. And then the child grows up saying, "Oh, okay, those thoughts are wrong. It's not what I should talk about or discuss or whatever." And so on. So that's how we start to close it down. But every single individual is born intuitive. Some are just happen to be born just more intuitive than others. But every single individual can develop that intuitive side. So, as I said, it's part of the work that I do. But the more you'll often hear, hence the reason from a business perspective, you'll often hear really successful business owners being provided with the data, but they'll refer to it as being, just I went with my gut, and that's their intuitive side. Some people don't call it intuitive. They don't call it, anything from a spiritual perspective, or like I know some really successful business owners, and they've no belief whatsoever in the universe or spirituality or anything at all. And these will be well documented, like it's in their autobiographies and all the kinds of things. They're the ones I'm talking about. But yet they will always refer to, no, they went with their gut feeling. And if you understand where the gut feeling comes from, it comes from the universe. So it's the way I describe it. It's your subconscious looks after your body. Let's call it that way. So you breathe without even thinking about it. the blood pumps around all your vessels without even thinking about it. That's what I refer to as your subconscious. Your unconscious, that's the difference I make. The unconscious is all that information that your senses are able to pick up, but we aren't overly connected with our unconscious. And part of that is because most people are operating from the amygdala part of the brain as opposed to the executive center part of the brain. And it's the executive center that is directly it's more, how to say, it's more heightened to pick up the information from your unconscious, which is through all your senses. Okay. The amygdala wants instant gratification, hence the reason why, it wants alcohol, it wants, sex, drugs, all that kind of stuff. So that's the amygdala. It just wants instant gratification. Whereas the executive center, it's responsible for planning, objectivity, creativity, um, innovation. That's what it's designed for. Even from a handwriting perspective, very few people actually do handwriting now because they're on the smartphone, they're on the tablet, they're on a computer or a laptop or whatever. We actually do very, very little handwriting now. Hence the reason why in the spiritual world, if you call it this way, or the how would you say, the personal development world, most people, and I absolutely advocate for it, is they'll talk about journaling. And journaling is handwriting. But what they don't understand, or vast majority of them don't understand, is because it's actually activating part of the executive center. And the executive center is directly connected with your unconscious, which is the intuitive side. So there's so much things that people can do to heighten the intuitive side to get all that information that they have, or that's accessible. And the intuitive side is then, or the unconscious is what I refer to as picking up or connected with the superconscious. The superconscious is what people will refer to as being the universe, God, higher power, higher mind, whatever you want to call it. The best way I can describe it from an energy perspective is the superconscious because it's the collective consciousness. So it's not just one consciousness; it's the overall collective consciousness. So the superconsciousness will be the best word to describe it. For me, it's always God. It's what I always connect to when I'm connecting. Um, and everybody has access to that. It doesn't matter what religion you come from, what beliefs and everything that you have. It's everybody has access to it, but we just shut it down.
Interest with that initial question, like, what do I want? Almost like, what do I want to be here for, or what's keeping me here?
Yeah,
Where did that, and just your mention of super consciousness, or for you, it's always been God. Where did that presence kind of come into that relationship with that question?
it's probably not until I'm going to say probably my 30s. So let me explain that a little bit. Because so um, I grew up Roman Catholic. Um, had to go to school, or had to go to mass every Sunday and so on. And even though, as Irish and a young kid, you'd stand beside the church, you'd find out what priest was on that day, and then you'd come back and you'd answer the invariable question. So who say mass? So you knew what the priest was. But God only knows if you're asked any other further questions in terms of what was the sermon about or whatever, there's no way I'd have to make it up. I wouldn't. So I growing up was you had that kind of relationship with God. Okay, as this kind of pulpit thumping, giving out, you're all sinners. It just wasn't for me. But even though I went through all the sacraments and all that kind of stuff as well, um, I then just so as teenagers do, I kind of just moved away from all of that. Um, but I distinctly remember where I was, and at one point, for one word, it didn't exist in my life as I was asking those questions. Um, but it wasn't until kind of later on, probably close to my 30s, and I distinctly remember I just literally just in my mind I just said to myself, I just want to have a deeper connection with God. It's simple as that. And I'm not joking you, within the days and the few weeks that followed, all I came across were different pieces of evidence to prove that a God existed. And there were different people that I came across, different conversations that I would encounter, all that kind of things. And from there on, I would encounter different scenarios for myself, whereby I would just, again, the only way I can describe it, and other people that we've come across will understand this, as in that I've experienced it. You, there's moments I would have experienced a presence of, and all you can call it. And I'm not saying, okay, so is it a presence? Was it a breeze in the room? I've asked those questions, but it's not about that. It's not a presence from you. You smell cigarettes, or you smell perfume, or you anything at all. It's it's an embrace. Okay, one experience I distinctly remember, because I can still see it to this day. I remember sitting on a stool, and I remember the statement that I said in my mind, um, and immediately all I got was this complete overwhelming. It was the feeling like as if somebody came up from behind me, wrapped their arms around me, covered me in the most comfortable cloak you could possibly find, but it was just pure, 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 unconditional love. That's all it felt like. And I've had multiples of those. And it was just kind of, it were at different times where it was enough for me to keep pursuing my quest. Um, and different moments and different things that were going on in my life at the time, and so on. And I've had multiples of those. So for anybody to kind of, if someone, just as much as I said to you, Mark, when you breathe in, you know air is going to be there. Just as much as I absolutely know, without a shadow of a doubt, there's something much, much greater than ourselves. Absolutely. There's literally not even a smidgen of doubt. And that's how the relationship has developed over the years. So, yeah, at one point I completely went away, to complete dismissal and so on. But, and it's just grown stronger and stronger and stronger from when I came back. Yeah, if you want to call it that way.
It's fascinating though, isn't it? Like the path of a connection to God, or a concept of God, and the banging of a pulpit and we're all sinners here,
Yeah,
contrasting that with the sense of I felt like the presence of unconditional love, or being
yeah,
held.
yeah.
It's one thing that I'm also really interested in generally, is just how people then go live their lives when they have experiences of that nature, and it can be in many different senses for many different people, but
Yeah.
it's a different, the analogy of the breath, I think, is a wonderful one. Like, it's, once again, I don't have to believe, although maybe you can hear my cold. I have to hope a little bit more today that I'm gonna take another one. But like, for you, when you started to feel that, and I'm really intrigued by the way of just it almost rekindling with just an earnest question, or once again, clarity of
Mm,
intention. How do you sense that again? Like, I know you're saying everyone has intuitive capacities,
yeah.
and that's something I really echo as well, in the sense of just how numb we make ourselves to our capacity to sense the world.
Mm.
But this thing with a felt experience or sense of God, is that, how did that align with the work then that you were to go on to do, as such? Like, did this start to influence things quite significantly, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, because I don't do anything without that connection.
Right.
I and again I'll come back to, I'm just a meat sack. That's all I am. Literally, just a walking meat sack. Um, because all I am is just a channel. So I see it as a partnership. I don't see it as being distinct or separate. Absolutely don't. I see it as being, it's a partnership, and we're doing things together. And so I wouldn't do the work that I'm doing if it wasn't for that connection. I just wouldn't, because then you're kind of saying, well, not that there's no point, like I have my own definition as regards to what the purpose of life is, and I have my own way of figuring out how an individual finds out what their own individual life purpose is. Um, so that still pushes you on, for one better word, or gives you a name to what you're aiming towards, is your North Star. Um, but I can't. I'm finding it difficult to answer the question, because I actually would find it difficult to, as such, to go through life and not having that connection.
Right.
Because could you? Yeah, absolutely. Because I know so many people. One brother was that way. He was an engineer. He didn't believe in anything at all. Um, he just believed you're born, you live, you die, full stop. That's it. There's nothing after. And so I can understand how some people can live that life. I just wouldn't be able to do it. I just wouldn't. It's especially having experienced those elements. All you want is, you just want more and more and more and more of that. And it can be, and I'm not saying to the point of whereby you can still have a normal life. And what I mean by normal is, well, there's no such thing as normal except on a washing machine. Um, what I mean by that is that, you don't have to go around with Jesus sandals. You can have all the things that you want in life. You can have the houses, you can have the cars, you can have whatever you want, um, and still have a really, really strong connection with God. Absolutely. Um, but it's a partnership. Absolutely a partnership.
A question I wanted to ask earlier that has just come back to me again now is, when you mentioned when you have some sort of intuitive sense of knowing, and it could be accompanied by an image, and it could be them in a certain particular context doing something.
Yeah.
What implications do you sense that has on our perception of time, or destiny? And if that's too wild a question,
No, no.
you can
Well,
say
okay.
pass. But I just wanted to
Or
know.
maybe rephrase it, just for me to really understand what is you're trying to
So,
do.
are the implications that might have around, like, does that exist as a potentiality? Does that exist as a knowing of what is? Can you still, like, would it be a question of, if you have the intention of moving towards that, it's available to you, or
Yeah.
how would you kind
Okay.
of
Yeah.
sense
No,
that?
that's a couple of good questions, because I kind of tackle this in a few different ways. One is, okay. So from a time frame perspective, um, but I'm reluctant to give people time frames nowadays.
Right.
So is there a time frame perspective? It is. I'll get a sense of, how far in the future that is, and how short or whatever. It is it's a really great point you're raising. It is a potential. Okay, it's a potential that, if I want to be really deep from this perspective, my belief is that it is the soul contract and the soul plan that the individual soul created before it even came into this earth. Um, and therefore that is um, the primary how would you say, um, route for an individual to take, if you want to call it that way. However, there's infinite possibilities. So, but I'm at this stage now that I don't give those images to clients. I don't, because what I've, again, one of the reasons is that, it overwhelms them, and invariably to come back with, I just couldn't do that, because the gap is so wide for them,
Right.
and they just can't see themselves. So it's overwhelming from that side. But the other side is, I don't want to plant something in their mind to say, well, now that that's what you're to go after, now let's just do it, um, because it's kind of like, well, okay, did I give them the image and therefore they pursue the image? If I gave them a different image, would they pursue that different image? It's a possibility, um, and that's one of the reasons why I don't give them that image, if that makes sense. I know it, but I'll I've learned to guide people on the road to it. They don't need to actually see that image, but the information that they do have absolutely tells them the direction that they should go in, and therefore there's infinite possibilities of how that could come about. Could they get there far? Could they get there faster? Absolutely, could get there faster, and that's where I'll guide them and tell them where they'll kind of go an off route or where they're on track or whatever and so on. But there's is there, for one of a word, yes, there's infinite possibilities, but there's the primary route that the individual soul has, for one of a word, planned or wanted for itself. It's its soul contract, and that's how I view it.
That's a fascinating. By the way, just the idea, it sounded pretty trippy to me there for a moment, of you having a almost like a vision of what another individual's soul contract is. Like
Yeah, it's kind of weird,
that's
isn't
quite, yeah, but it's
it?
but almost like I'm not very good at keeping secrets. Like I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know,
I know.
I don't know how this would flash up for me, and how I'd maintain a stillness or an equanimity around that. But can you talk to me a little bit about that? Because I've never really given much thought to the idea of a soul's contract. That this terminology has appeared before in other conversations I've had a long time ago, I guess. And yes, it seems so pertinent to the dis-ease that people could, like, or as a reason for potential dis-ease in our
Yeah,
life.
yeah,
And that, like, almost that gnawing sense that if we don't engage with what could be potentially described as your soul's contract, or what you were predetermined as what you would like to do, that this would be a really meaty or significant part of that discomfort, or that, I guess, not belonging, or something to that effect in our lives as well.
yeah. It can do, and when you understand it, it can also give you a huge amount of um, resolve. Is what I'm going to say. The way I'm going to the way I'm going to explain it is that, so um, what I've put together, from, again, I'm 56, so you're talking 46 years of research here. Um, what I've put together in terms of, we all share what I call an overarching purpose in life. Okay, and the way I describe that is that our overarching purpose in life is to be your genius you, to live life fully, to experience, to love, and to evolve. So there's 5 elements. Then we have an individual unique life purpose. And that individual unique life purpose is fingerprint specific to an individual. It's completely unique to that individual. And that's the mission, or what they are here to pursue. Okay. And again, there's a number of elements when it comes to that. Your genius you encapsulates your individual life purpose. All right. But let's chunk up to the overarching life purpose. So the overarching life purpose, again, just to reflect on it, is to be your genius you. It's to live life fully, to experience, to love, and to evolve. So we can only, for someone to really know what it's like to feel cold, they must first understand and know what it's like to feel heat or to warmth. For someone to know what it's like to feel abundant, they have to know and understand what it feels like to be scarcity or poor. So we learn through contrast, we experience through contrast. So if you're a soul, and before you come into this lifetime, all you know is unconditional love. That's all you know. And to really know unconditional love, it's the most purest love ever. And it's so hard to describe for other people, but that's all you know. But you want to experience what it's like to be everything else. So that's where you'll come in, and you'll come across, and you'll encounter so many different situations and circumstances, because that's what you want to experience. Because it's through the experience that we actually get to evolve. So again, we only evolve as a soul. And that's hence the reason why you will have come across multiple levels of souls, or if you want to call it a hierarchy of souls, which there is. But that's how you evolve as a soul. So, in order to go through life, you've got to be your genius you. You've got to live life fully. So that's where, for one better word, you've got to suck every single ounce out of life as possible. Um, Live life fully to love, which is to know what it's like to absolutely unconditionally love somebody else. And that is the most hardest thing to encounter, because we come across so many different people and circumstances and situations that how can you love somebody that's just, for one word, smacked you across the face? But how that's what we're here to learn, um, to experience and to evolve. So when you take all of those into account, now you'll get an understanding of, well, as a soul, you want to map out your plan. So if you're going on holidays, you'll put a plan together. If you're building a business, you'll put a business plan together. So there's so many areas of our life that we plan ahead. As a soul, we do pretty much exactly the same thing. So for somebody wanting to experience what it's like to, for example, what it's like to be blind, that's part of the soul contract. For somebody that's, and I know that's hard for an awful lot of people to hear or understand if they've never kind of maybe taught along these lines. Um, and again, it's not for me to, don't believe everything I say. Do your own research, look for your own evidence. And that's what I tell everybody in terms. But out of everything that from everything that I've encountered and what I've researched, all the different people that I've met, had interviews with, people that have gone through near-death experiences, all the information that I pick up and talking to other people and so on. It's a combination of all of those coming together. Hence the reason why I have my understandings, for one good word, of what this life is about. And is it complete? No. Hence the reason why I'm still pursuing, and I'm still pursuing that quest. Um, but absolutely every single individual here is on a soul contract.
Just to get a sense of, because you mentioned earlier, just your background was accountancy.
Mm.
How did you start to speak on these things? How did you start to even pivot into these scenarios? You even mentioned, people, these kind of conversations coming up in a business sense as well.
Yeah.
Just fascinated by how you went from one thing to the other, or fused them together, or whatever way you describe it.
Yeah, I trained as an accountant because I'll say I'm a recovering accountant. I I went into a company, it was investment brokers, and it was literally by default. And I just happened to be doing work for the finance director at the time. And he said, you've got a real aptitude for the numbers. Would I not pursue accounting? So I started, flew through the exams, um, moved to another company, passed my exams and all that kind of stuff and so on. Um, and then, so I was using the numbers, for one of a word, of a way of how I could prove the growth in the company, and understanding how the mechanics of the company worked from a numbers perspective. But invariably, I was using the intuitive side in order to guide where we needed to go, from a strategy perspective, or from a vision perspective of where the company was to go. All of those conversations would have been quite business-like. Let's put it that way. I set up my own business as a business consultant in 2001. So that's whatever, 23, 24 years ago, whatever it is. Um, you'd think an accountant would know, wouldn't you? But but anyway, so I set up in 2001, and being with clients then in your own business gives you a little bit more flexibility. But then I would start to have conversations whereby they were quite deep conversations. I'd have clients tell me different information that they would then share with anybody else. But how I would bring it across would be, what if you were to do X in the business? Or so I wouldn't say, look, I'm picking up the intuitive. I wouldn't even use the label of intuitive. I just wouldn't do it. Um, and especially in Ireland, going back 20 odd years, you just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so then roll forward, I started to blend it in a little bit more. It started to be a little bit more open. And then I published my first book in 2011, um, and that was called Evolve. Hence the reason why in the title there's a message. So I published that in 2011, and that was me for one of it, we're putting it to the world in terms of, look, what I've always about was how to align your professional and your spiritual self, and put a book in book format, so the people that wanted to, that were more open to that side of things, they were able to find me. I had clients turn around after the book was published, and a distance started to be created. Let's put it that way, because
Right.
spirituality just was not for them. And then, getting rolled forward a little bit more, I made a decision. Look, I just want to work with people that I just want to be completely open with people. So I developed two websites. One was the business consultancy website, and then the other was Paul William Davis, completely personal, completely, um, for one of a word, out there as regards who I am. So I'm intuitive. This is how I work and all that kind of stuff and so on. Um, and cut a long story short, now the two of them blended into one. So now it's just Davis Business Consultants, and now it's just a case of when clients, even when I have my first meeting with the clients, they look at, this is how I work. I'm not your stereotypical business consultant. I'll bring all that with you in terms of strategy and where we go with the business and so on. But there's the other side of me, which is the intuitive side, and that's how I work with clients. And the ones that are, um, I'm not saying they're fully open to it, but the door is open for them. They're quite happy to continue from that perspective. There's others that will turn around and say, no, it's not for me, and it's closed doors. That's absolutely fine. They're not clients minded, you know.
That's absolutely magic. I just love the you know, because it's quite a leap, isn't it? Like to
In Ireland, yeah.
yeah,
In
but
in the States or Canada, like, because I've worked with clients in the States and Canada, and it's just, oh my god, they welcome you with open arms,
right,
because they're so understanding from that perspective. And they, because they've done, for one of a word, a gang, and again, I'm not trying to pick who's better than others in terms of the Irish, English, American, Australian, whatever it be, and so on. But America will have done a huge amount more personal development in business than they will have in European countries. And
right.
just that's just my experience. Go work with all different nationalities.
Paul, just from everything that you've been sharing, like, you know, even the opening question of, you know, what is essentially keeping me here, what keeps me wanting to live this life, to an inquiry from that, from the age of 10 onwards, to, you know, discovering a sense of being realizing that you were picking up on so many things by being an empath, an intuitive sense of images or just signs or expressions that were coming to you around whoever was within your space, and then suddenly, or then realizing that you were in some ways a vessel for this, for giving a voice to whatever was coming through you or whatever was being channeled, a reconnection with God, and some stunningly profound moments of sensing unconditional love, to then going forth and even merging the worlds of business consultancy and your intuitive nature. Really fascinated and not to mention just the revealing the soul's contract, and helping people and guiding people into following that. Just really curious to ask you the question, Paul, of what is a good life for you.
It actually comes back to the overarching purpose, which is literally just to be your genius you, to live life fully, to experience, to love, and to evolve. That for me is a great life. That's an amazing life.
As I admired in you, Paul, the first time I talked, the clarity with which you speak around this, you know, when you talk about even the clarity of intention being important, the clarity which you speak around these matters, the extensive level of kind of research and fascination that has obviously guided your life with this inquiry as well. Thank you so much once again for joining me today on the What is a Good Life
Thank
podcast.
you.
It's been a huge thrill.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Mark.